Hi everyone, I'm Emma Everett, Client Advice Manager and Chair of the Residential Investment Committee at Momentum Wealth. Today I'm joined by Phil Anderson, who manages our development team. Thanks for joining us, Phil.
No worries.
Now Phil, in the last week we've seen some big announcements from both the federal and state government relating to building stimulus packages designed to stimulate some activity in the residential construction and property development sector. Now, this is great news for these sectors who just started to see some signs of recovery in late 2019, early 2020, before the COVID-19 pandemic hit the WA market. Now, of course, these stimulus packages are mainly geared towards providing employment and getting builders and their contractors out to work. But there are some implications for small-scale developers as well as for owner-occupiers who are looking to build a home. Phil, could you start us off by talking us through the details of the federal package?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, there is a lot of detail in the package. It is sort of still coming through. It's been announced largely through press release. There's still elements that are being ironed out. The detail that we have seen, it's extensive. There's a lot of conditions. It does rival John Hewson's GST on his birthday cake explanation, but we've spent the time, we've looked through what is available. We've spoken to a number of agencies to get their take on it as well, and we think we've got a pretty good handle on it. So the federal package is the Home Builder Grant. There's a $25,000 grant for an owner-occupier who builds a new home or substantially renovates an existing residence. So one of the key conditions is you have to enter into a contract between the 4th of June and the 31st of December this year. Construction must then commence within 3 months of that contract being entered into. There's a cap of $750,000 on the value of the property if you're building, and a renovation has to be at least $150,000 in value. There are also some income caps. There's a $125,000 cap on an individual's income, or $200,000 if it's a couple. And the key point is it's applicable to owner-occupiers only, so investors purchasing a property won't qualify. But if you're an owner-occupier of an existing property, which you do develop, there's an opportunity to apply for that grant there.
Now, I understand there are some key differences with the state package. Could you talk us through those?
That's right. There is also the state package, which we mentioned. So that's a $444 million housing stimulus package. There's a few components to it. The first is a stamp duty rebate. So that's for off-the-plan apartments. And that's been extended. So that was in place before COVID, but it's been extended to include properties under construction already, which is the key difference. So that helps, some of our syndicated apartment projects where we're developing apartments. There's also a commitment to a social housing package, so purchasing properties for the Department of Communities to use in social housing, and also for some of their, their shared equity schemes and things like that. But the big one for us is the $20,000 building bonus grant. So that's applicable to people who build a new home or buy a property in a single tier development as part of that scheme. So a single tier development is a townhouse or a villa. It doesn't apply to apartments, which is the key point. It's available to buyers who enter into a contract like the federal scheme between the 4th of June and the 31st of December this year. Unlike the federal stimulus, it doesn't include a cap on the purchase price or a value of the contract. There's no income or means test. And importantly, it does apply to investors who enter into a building contract within that next 6 months, which was the other difference to the federal package. So that's where it holds the biggest benefit for smaller scale developers. So you could buy a property and get the grant on those developments. There's some other key conditions around titles and not having common walls and things like that, which need to be considered in designing your development. And I'm happy to have a chat to anyone who's interested in finding out a bit more about that if you want to get in contact with us.
It sounds like there's a lot of detail to wade through and a lot of ways potentially to make a mistake in that process. Yeah. So there are a number of investors and some homeowners who are sitting on small development blocks in Perth, particularly with a number of councils having been through rezoning processes over the last 10 years. What would your advice be to them if they're considering using this stimulus package as a way to get their development started?
Okay. So it's a great opportunity to get that stimulus package and get a little bit of extra funding into your development. So it's applicable to each dwelling, which is the key point. So if you're doing, say, a 2-villa development, you could potentially get $40,000 in grants, so $20,000 per villa. The key is how you develop it. It's got to meet the criteria of the scheme. No party walls in common property. You've got to have titles up front and various other matters as well. So. Yeah.
And of course, one thing that first-time developers don't always realise is there's a lot more to signing a building contract than just choosing a builder. There's a lot of planning and approvals processes that have to be in place before that deadline can be achieved.
Yeah.
And so what's your advice on making sure that that building contract is signed within the deadline and within the time frame that's required?
Yeah, so that's, that is a very key point to this. There are deadlines that you've got to meet to qualify for the grant, so it's critical to get started early. You've sort of got 6 months to get your approvals, get your strata titles in place, appoint a builder, and get your approvals in place to be able to get started within the timeframes. So it's basically that's it. It's critical to get started early, and everything pretty much has to go right. So it's important to get started now.
Absolutely. And there's so many processes in the development process that can overlap, but only if you know that you can overlap them the first time around. So that's where having a professional development advisor is so helpful, particularly that first time around. Now, finance is another part of this puzzle, of course, where we've been hearing from some lenders that they won't consider the $20,000 towards the equity in the project, or for owner occupiers who are building a home. They still have to have the full deposit required and all the other requirements demonstrating they can service the loan. That might change as more lenders assess these grants and work out how to work it into their lending packages, but we are recommending that all owner occupiers and all developers get independent finance broking advice before signing any contracts, before making any commitments to move forward.
Yep.
Another consideration, of course, is location. And one of the factors that's often overlooked by developers and by owner occupiers is the supply in the area. What supply are you competing with to resell or rent out your project? Or if you're an owner occupier who's going to hold that property for a number of years, could future supply hold back the capital growth of your property or even cause it to go down in value?
Yeah.
Of course, not all sites are going to be profitable and not all sites are going to have a demand for their end product. So what kind of due diligence would you recommend that a developer does, for example, prior to deciding what to build on their site?
Yeah, so it's like normal, due diligence applies. You've got to make sure that you do all your due diligence on the site before you purchase. Perhaps it's even more important at the moment. So you don't want anything that's going to cause you a delay. Like we said, there's timeframes by which you've got to achieve milestones to get the grants. You don't want a delay in planning, for example, that holds you up and pushes you past the deadline for the state grant. Likewise, there's extra costs. If you rush the site and purchase a property without doing that due diligence, you may end up with extra costs that absorb the value of that grant, which defies the purpose of doing the development. So there's that. You've also got to make sure that, like you said, the location is important. It's important that we consider the value of the property at completion and what it's going to sell for. We don't want to rush into purchasing a property, and there is already anecdotal evidence of a lot of demand for these sorts of development sites. We don't want to rush the property, pay too much for it, and then our development doesn't stack up. We also got to consider, what are we competing against? What other developers are in the area? Are we competing against, say, bigger home builders that are doing house and land packages, and making sure that we, like I said, development stacks up for those reasons. And probably the final one is builder due diligence. We always recommend you do due diligence on your builders, and we certainly do a lot of that to make sure the builders are the best guys for the job. But we need to make sure that they're not, loading extra pricing into their build contracts because there's more demand or because they know that you're getting this grant. So due diligence always applies, but particularly so in this market.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for those insights, Phil. Really appreciate your input and your advice to our clients.
No worries at all.
Thanks for joining us today. I hope that this has been a helpful discussion to help you work out all the different areas you need to research before you decide on your next building project, whether it's for a home or whether it's for a development site. If you'd like some advice from our finance, buying or property development teams on the custom specifics of your project to make sure that you get the best possible outcome, do get in touch with us or visit our website at momentumwealth.com.au.